Yeah.
All
Okay.
right.
All right.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of UIC Liberty TV Live. My name is Joseph Patterson, President of the United Independence Congress, and in approximately 7 minutes, we're going to be live with Stylz FM discussing accountability of public officers. To be more specific, we're going to talk about accountability of elected politicians, members of parliament, senators, and so on. But before we go to all of that, let me welcome the UIC Vice President, Mr. Devon Thompson, who is on the call with me now before we join Stylz FM. Mr. Thompson, how is the weather over there where you are?
The weather is actually really amazing. It's what is this? 24 degrees over here, and here over there it's like hot. It's like burning the hot
Yeah,
dog over there, but it's good over here.
wonderful. Well, it was very hot today, but now we have a lot of
Yeah.
rain in St. Elizabeth. I'm in St. Elizabeth in an area called Bogue, and we have a good shower of rain going on outside. I have to lock up all the windows and everything. But let's do a quick shout out to all our members, the UIC members out there, UIC members, also everybody else who is tuning in from across the spectrum. We know we have people in the diaspora, Jamaicans right here at home, St. Thomas to Montego Bay. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I am looking forward to hearing your questions and your comments as we talk about accountability. How do we hold our politicians accountable in Jamaica? You might see recently where the Prime Minister is seeking to circumvent the limited checks and balances that we have in terms of awarding of contracts. And he's seeking to yet again circumvent our limited, very, very limited checks and balances to go to a sole source contract, to give the contract to the Chinese without going through the usual tender process. Of course, this is not very good for Jamaica. It's a very bad sign. And in fact, this has been going on for years. And the funny thing is, the opposition is currently chiding the government for doing what it is doing, and rightly so. But unfortunately, the opposition, when it was in power, did the very same thing. And this is the problem with Jamaica. Whether we elect this side or that side, they continue to do the same things that are undermining our economy, that is causing corruption and is causing a big impact on the lives of Jamaicans as we lose billions of dollars every year to corruption. Well, today we're going to talk about this. We're going to talk about how to hold our politicians accountable. So please go and call your friends next door. Tell them to tune in right now on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube to listen to our discussion on Stylz FM, where we're going to be talking with Mr. Chambers and others about the issue of accountability. How do we hold our politicians accountable? What does accountability really means? Do we have accountability? Is it just simply once every 5 years we elect a government or we terminate a government? Is that enough accountability? You would have seen recently we had the issue with Mr. Wright, George Wright, over there in Westmoreland, where he was seen on camera beating a woman, and it appears as if the parliament could do nothing or refuse to do anything. I think some residents in his constituency may want to recall him, but there's no provision for recall in the current system of governance that we have. So, how do we hold our politicians accountable? How do we hold those we elect accountable? And that is the challenge that we have. As we go through this discussion, we're going to have Mr. Wright, Mr. Winston Wright, who's also a member of the UIC, with us on the discussion. I'm just waiting now for a call from Stylz FM. It should be here in about 3 minutes, where we're going to be discussing accountability of public officers. What do you think? Do you think that we have accountability right now? If you do, just type wherever you're watching, whether it's on YouTube or Facebook, just type in the comment area what you think about accountability in our government. One of the problems we have, you see, in the system that we have in Jamaica is that we don't have proper separation of powers. You don't have a separation of the executive branch of government from the legislative branch of government. They're kind of mixed up, twined in together. And because of that, Jamaica continues to suffer from an extensive amount of corruption. And you know the cost of corruption. Corruption is why we have a unskilled, unequipped, poorly performing police force, because monies that should have been spent on equipping our police officers properly were diverted away from that cause. Similarly, we are having problems with our education system, failing to turn out quality in terms of our students, because, again, funds have been diverted away from education into corruption. So accountability is very, very important. And so I'm looking forward to our discussion that we're going to have with Stylz FM on the issue of corruption. If this is your first time hearing about the UIC or seeing us, I do encourage you to go to our website at www.uicjamaica.com, where you can learn more about us and you can participate. We are Jamaica's youngest political party, and our commitment is to creating a real new Jamaica, one that is safe, clean, and orderly. And for us to do that, we need you to get involved in the process. Now is not the time for us to sit back and hope that somebody's going to come in and fix Jamaica for us. We are going to have to do it, and I have led the way, and a number of others have joined with me, and I encourage you to do the same as well. So yes, I think we lost Mr. Thompson earlier, and he's back with us now. Welcome again, Sir Thompson. We should be hearing from Stylz FM anytime now. It's 5 o'clock Jamaica time, so we're waiting for them. Let's see if they will be able to join us. Now I'm going to call. They're supposed to call, but I'm not hearing. So let me call and see if we can get this going. So again, everyone, welcome to UIC Jamaica. All right, let's see here. 1 second.
Yes, Mr. Patterson, just hold for me, please.
Okay, wonderful. All right, so we're just...
As soon as we feel the music is coming, right?
Okay.
Right. As soon as I feel the music is coming, right? Okay, no problem. Right.
Okay, it looks like they're having some technical difficulties, but they should be with us shortly. Let me see some... I can't see you from where I am, but if you write a comment or a question in the box. Here we go.
My name is Mr. Paper, and I'm representing my co-host John shortly. This evening, we are going to continue this discussion on how we hold the public office to work out. And joining will be Mr. Joseph from the United States Congress, and he will be sharing his custom. Do not touch that will be returned. We will continue that discussion. Governance,
Boy, they seem to have a very bad connection. I hope it's going to be better than this as we go along, but the quality of their program is extremely poor, which is why I wanted to make sure we have this very live, clean connection. But as we wait for them to connect, welcome everyone. Thank you very much for tuning in today.
My name is Stylz. My co-host is Joseph L. This evening we are going to discuss how we are going to continue the discussion on how we hold public accountable. Next month, I started like how we come now. And we want to continue that discussion this evening. And joining us on the Bishop Joseph L from the conference, we all share in that discussion. If you want to join the conversation, you can call or WhatsApp 877 453 1444. That's 877 453 1444. And if you are overseas, you can send a WhatsApp message to the 954 338 7973. That's 954 338 7973. Now, you can also
Yeah, I know there's a lot of echo and noise in their transmission. But let's see if we can hear and participate. It's very bad, actually.
We want to start and have a public for making this program possible. Are you hearing us?
Yes, I'm hearing you, but your transmission is very bad. Lots of echo and very inaudible. I can hear you, but there's an echo that follows you.
Okay. We're going to ask our next that later but while I President of the United States Congress, he would have been on this program previously, and he has agreed to join us in this discussion again. Really, most of my viewers who are watching on my Facebook group tonight, that I'm joining from a different place in the evening. Thank you, Dr. And so I'm joining from my office actually, instead of from the studio. Mr. Patterson, is the audio any better?
It's slightly better, but I think you have maybe another device that is also transmitting in your area. So you have a terrible echo. I can hear you, but I have to really strain to do so.
All right. Tell you what, Mr. Patterson, let us take a break and you try to do that and come back.
Sure, no problem. Thank you so much. I'll wait for you. All right. So we're waiting for them to join us, but I do find that most times on that station, they tend to have a problem with their phone connection. I'm not sure why, but a big welcome to all of you who are on right now. I see Sophia Murray. Good evening, Sophia. Thank you very much for joining us today. And our topic of discussion is public officers and accountability. You know, accountability of the Prime Minister, accountability of the opposition leader, accountability of the members of parliament, accountability of ministers. Jamaica continues to struggle with having accountability. And oftentimes the citizens have to wait for 4 to 5 years before they can express their disappointment by going to the polls. More and more Jamaicans are even refusing to go to the polls. You might have noticed that in the last election. Here we go. Let's see. Hello. Good evening.
Mr. Patterson, are you hearing me clearly?
Yes, I'm hearing you a lot better now. Thank you so much.
Okay, all right. I'm going to merge you now, please.
Sure. Hope I didn't talk too soon.
Studio, are you hearing me?
Yes, I can hear you. Wonderful.
And you're hearing a little better now, Mr. Patterson?
Much better. Far better. Thank you so much.
Okay. All right. Studio, you can go ahead and join us again. All right, everyone. I want to thank you all for joining us again. I think we have worked out a little bit of the challenge that we had here. I think the challenge is because we are connecting from outside of the studio, and so it's posing a little challenge. Okay, Mr. Patterson.
Yes.
The first question I want to ask is, what measures do we now have in place to hold public officers to account?
Presently, we the people don't have anything. There are no measures that we have in place as a people to say, for example, recall or initiate sanctions against a public officer who is not who did not behave appropriately, for example. What we do have, however, is within the existing structure, the Public Accounts Committee, which would look at the public accounts and after it has been addressed by the Auditor General and try to, effect some kind of oversight on, misappropriations or misbehavior on a fiscal level. But in terms of the conduct of parliamentarians, that is usually left to any kind of public pressures that may be brought, outrage in the public, and if the prime minister deems it fit, then he might do something. You have seen cases where the prime minister held out as long as he could, for example with the Royal Reed situation. You have seen where the prime minister tries to hold out on the Petrodram situation. So we don't have any clear set of protocols and guidelines and code of conduct with appropriate disciplinary measures attached to it to cause our parliamentarians to have to worry significantly about being appropriately disciplined for misconduct. It has to be very egregious before it has any teeth in terms of, say, being forced to resign. We don't have too many resignations normally, or having sanctions being brought by fellow parliamentarians against an existing parliamentarian. We don't have much of that here because there's not a lot of clarity and carefully planned systems for executing such measures against those who have misbehaved.
And let me ask, I'm going to ask her about this question. Do you think it's by design that we don't have measures?
Absolutely, it's by design. If you, nothing happens in the political sphere of life, globally or locally, which is not by design. So, for example, it is by design that for example, the laws that we have on the books currently doesn't have clear job descriptions for members of parliament. It is by design that you don't have clear employment agreements for parliamentarians. It is by design that you don't have a clear system of code of conduct with disciplinary measures attached to them for members of parliament. It is by design, in fact, that we have a system with very poor checks and balances where power is concentrated in the office of the Prime Minister. So, yes, it is by design that we don't have in place what we need to properly sanction and discipline MPs who misbehave.
But what is our appetite? How for appetite that citizens to hold our public officers accountable?
Yeah.
Is there a great appetite for it among our citizens?
Good question. You're a little bit low. If you could speak up a little louder, but I heard you anyways. You're asking if there's an appetite among the citizenry for action. I
Is there a
believe
great appetite among our citizenry
yes.
to hold our public officers accountable?
No, I think there's a great appetite, but there's also a great ignorance. I mean, if you look at the output of our school system, the vast majority of our citizens haven't even passed 5 subjects. Most of them haven't passed math and English. So for the vast majority, we want change, we desire change, but we don't even know what kind of change to ask for because civics is not something that was carefully taught in our schools. Our students don't understand governance. Our citizens don't understand governance properly. A lot of highfalutin language is used in the parliament and in our process of governance. And so the people want change, but they're not empowered to demand change. They feel powerless, actually. And the idea, which has been proffered throughout the years, is that nothing better is there. We have to just suffer between these two political parties forever because we're told immediately that no third party can win, for example. And we just go. So what has been happening, Mr. Chambers, is that more and more of our citizens are simply resigning themselves to the reality and withdrawing from the political process, which is why you see the number of voters, actual voters, dropping every year to the point where about 63% chose not to participate in the last election. And before that, it was approximately 52% that did not participate.
How do we then arrest that declining appetite for citizens to hold public office? What is it that we need to do as citizens, concerned citizens ourselves, to ensure that we don't have this continued lack of interest in holding our public officers accountable?
Yes, for us as citizens to get involved, it's for us to decide that we truly want better for Jamaica and to rise up in large numbers, beginning with each of us, deciding that we are going to step out of tradition. For example, it has been traditional for us to vote for one party or the other. It's been traditional for us to think that a third party cannot win. And it is now becoming traditional for people to say, I will not vote. But not voting alone doesn't fix the problem. It's a good start because it first of all sends a signal. But we need to send more than a signal. Now we do need to vote, but we do need to become activists. We need to become members of alternative parties. We need to become involved. We need to donate, volunteer our time to educate ourselves and to educate our fellow citizens on our rights and our responsibilities as citizens. We need to take Jamaica seriously. We need to stop hoping and praying for outside intervention and to intervene in our own country and get involved in the process of the political development of our country and participate now in changing the course of our country. So that means joining a movement such as the UIC, volunteering, donating, and actively engaging in the process of political education and political participation. It is only by participating in our electoral process, and I'm not talking about being forced to vote for the lesser of two evils. If you don't like the two evils, create something good or be a part of the creation of something good. And then and only then will we have the appetite to change the structure of governance, the one that is more meaningful and substantive for Jamaicans.
Recently, there have been some uproar
Yes.
regarding one member of parliament, and we are now seeing another storm coming with the recent utterances of the Minister of Foreign Affairs. What is it, do you think, Mr. Patterson, we need to have in place, particularly for parliamentarians, when these kind of, and then let me just say that it's not just this one parliamentarian and the recent utterances between the former foreign minister and the current foreign minister. There have been other parliamentarians who have been accused, and some who were before the court on about their violent actions.
Yes.
What is it, Mr. Patterson, you think need to be in place to hold parliamentarians to account when issues like these come up?
Very good. One of the problems we have in Jamaica is that we treat parliamentarians, we treat elected officials differently from how we treat regular citizens. Now, Mr. Chambers, if you and I are employees in a company and we engage in any form of misconduct, first of all, when we were hired into the company, we'd be hired with a job description. Currently, our members of parliament are hired by the people of Jamaica with no job descriptions. It is unclear to the members of parliament what their real responsibility is. Are they representing the party? Are they representing the people? Are they representing outside influence, such as those who funded their campaigns? Who are they representing? What is their actual role and responsibility? Now, I think we have assumed that we know what that is, but we haven't codified that in law. That's one. Number two, we don't have an employment agreement with our MPs. So there's nothing to appeal to specifically to say this is the terms of reference of your employment. Number three, we don't have a code of conduct for members of parliament that is codified in law and which carries with it appropriate sanctions for misbehavior. And three, we don't have clear checks and balances in our parliament which would allow the parliament to be able to act upon these issues. And I'll give you an example here. If we were to try to do something about Mr. Wright's behavior, for example, or the former foreign minister's alleged behaviors, if we were to try to do something about that at the time, what do we refer to? Which code, which agreement, which job description, which code of conduct do we, and who does it? So, for example, right now, the Prime Minister is head of the executive branch of government, but he also controls the legislative branch of government. So he controls the MPs who sits in the majority in the legislature, and he controls the executive branch, and he also controls the ministers. And we all know that when the opposition speaks, we already expect them to oppose. So we can't hold everything they say with much water, because it might be because they're just opposing. But supposing instead we had a system where the executive branch of government was elected separately from the legislature, and one did not control the other, but act as an oversight. What if we had elected senators? So our senators could be a proper oversight body if the question is about a member of the executive or a member of the lower house. What if the MPs were independent of the executive and independent of the Senate, so that if they needed to discipline a member of the Senate or a member of the executive, they could do so with a greater level of confidence because of that separation of powers. But unfortunately, the system we have in place is not designed to have such checks and balances. And that is what the UIC wants to bring in, proper checks and balances, so that then we can have proper disciplinary actions being taken by bodies that are not corrupted by having one person, in this case the Prime Minister, having extensive power over both the legislature because he appoints the senators and he has the majority of the House and also controls the executive.
So you're saying that there's too much power that is reposed in the office of the Prime Minister?
Absolutely. And as you know, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And what we have in Jamaica is absolute corruption.
Yeah. So there is a renewed discussion about the impeachment bill. Before we get to the specifics, what are your thoughts on this impeachment bill?
Yeah, first of all, the impeachment bill, I think, has been sitting on the shelf since 2011, 2012, which means that there is no way that either government or opposition is serious about having an impeachment bill, because you have seen how, when it suits them, they have no problem ramming through changes through the legislature. They can create a bill today and it's passed by tomorrow if they deem it so, if they deem that it's vitally important to the nation. So obviously, an impeachment bill is not very important to either of these two parties. Now, moving along, the impeachment bill itself is convoluted and again does not clearly delineates how you can impeach the Prime Minister and the opposition leader. Instead, it gives us a circuitous route through which the system can be circumvented by the Prime Minister. And so if the Prime Minister can circumvent the system, it means that he can therefore cover for any one of his or her MPs and prevent them from being properly impeached. Now, if we're going to have an impeachment process, it needs to be one that rests with civil society and the judiciary and with direct participation by the people of Jamaica, beginning with the constituency in question. Anything short of that is a facade and a trick, like the rest of our constitution is.
So, do we need an impeachment bill?
Well, we can use an impeachment bill if it is not going to be a facade, if it's just another piece of legislation which will make us feel good but have no teeth, or can be used as a form of witch hunt, like we've seen in the US, where it's more of a charade, a game, rather than something of substance. If they're serious about an impeachment bill, I can assure you, the excellent minds on the UIC side would be more than happy to put forward a bill that will have teeth and which will be independent of partisan interference.
Okay, so let me understand from all that you have said so far, Mr. Patterson, for the Prime Minister to be separated from the legislature and the executive, which means you are talking a Republican system, a republic.
Yes.
Where the Prime Minister is chosen directly and Member of Parliament are chosen directly. Are you also advocating for senators also be elected rather than be, what should I say?
Appointed, yes. So right now our senators are appointed. There are 21 senators in the House of Senate. 13 is appointed by the government, and more specifically by the Prime Minister, and 8 are appointed by the opposition leader. Now that is absolute fool. How can you have a second chamber which is supposed to look at the laws that are about to be passed, that comes from the lower house, and they're supposed to assess this objectively and render opposition either to approve or to ask for amendments or for it to be redone? And they're going to be persons who have been appointed by the Prime Minister, who is the leader of the majority in the House of Representatives, and by the opposition leader, who is the leader of the second largest group if there's more than 3 parties in the House. Now, you've just created a situation where you have rubber stamp persons. So the 13 will automatically give the Prime Minister a majority in the Senate. Now, the UIC is much smarter than that. What we want is 14 senators each of them elected directly by their parish. So you have 14 parishes, you have 14 senators, and they will represent and look out for the interest of their parishes. Now, here why this is so important. When you have a bill coming up from the House of Representatives to the Senate, you're now going to have the 14 viewpoints of the country being taken into consideration. Those people in St. Thomas or Portland, those in St. James or Hanover, those in St. Catherine or St. Anne, will have their concerns as a parish being addressed by this bill. And you're going to have this careful oversight before the bill is passed. The Prime Minister or the leader of government would now not have influence over these persons, and they can think clearly and act appropriately to represent the interest of their constituents.
But just before we go to the great word, I will ask, this is what I asked Mr. Patterson.
Yes.
What difference would it make if we separate, if we directly elect the member of parliament, the prime minister, and the senator? What difference would it make to our appetite as citizens to hold our parliamentarians to account, whether or not we let them separate?
Mm-hmm.
Would it really change our yearning to hold them to account?
Well, the reason why the appetite is low right now is because the system is bad and has been so bad for a long time that it has turned off the citizens and have also made the citizens feel powerless. When we change the system in the ways that the UIC has advocated for years now, if we change the system, what you're doing, you're bringing back representation to politics. You're bringing back the idea that your parliamentarian, that your senator represents you. You're also bringing back checks and balances. Without checks and I shouldn't say bringing back because we never had it. Without proper checks and balances, you don't have good governance. And without good governance, you don't have an educated, informed, and engaged electorate.
Okay. All right. So we are speaking with Mr. Joseph Patterson, President of the United Independent Congress, and the discussion so far has been quite interesting. I'm a little bit more when we come back on the other side of this break. We're going to make some money. Don't go anywhere. Stay with us.
Yes, so they're taking a money-making break at the moment to get some advertisement in. Let me see if Mr. Thompson wanted to join us. Mr. Thompson, would you like to join us? There we go. Yes, sir. You have been listening to the conversation?
Yes, I have.
We are here. We are here.
Just remember when you come after break, just announce us again here.
Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Thompson.
Yeah, I'm listening to the conversation. It's important that our viewers know what the UIC is about. Right? We're gonna have a president, 3 vice presidents, 1 for each county. We're gonna have all of 14 senators. We're gonna have those quote unquote 63 MPs. I don't know, we might play around for a little bit, and they're all gonna be directly elected by the people of Jamaica. So no more of this appointment foolishness where they put their cronies in certain positions in government. So we're gonna have a less of a corrupt system, because our system is gonna be that non-partisan constitutional republic that we talk about, and the constitution that we're creating is designed to protect the citizens of Jamaica from government and protect the citizens of Jamaica from each other, because it's designed to provide equal protection for life, liberty, and property. And it's important that the people of Jamaica understand the significance of this. The system that we're proposing creates that freedom that we all really need. And Joseph, you saw my post earlier today on my page about freedom. Lots of people are afraid of freedom. And one of the reasons why we are afraid of freedom is because of how we were educated. We were educated to be quote unquote slaves to the existing system, the system that robs us every day, the system that that beats us every day. We were raised to be slaves of the system, so we don't know how to do without the system, right? But the
Mhm.
UIC is here to educate Jamaicans and to show you guys that we can live, we can earn, we can learn without government taking that beating stick and forcing us to do it. We can do it on our own.
Definitely, definitely. I'm wondering if Mrs. Patterson wants to join us. I see her lingering in the background. She wants to share her
So
thoughts on what she has been hearing
I
so
don't I
far.
don't know I don't know if you see my Fortis crest right here.
Oh,
My crest.
what is that? Casey?
Yeah, what you mean, man? Fortis Cadere
Well,
non-protest.
all right. Well, I can't say nothing because my school wasn't at the top,
Yeah,
so no problem, no problem.
and
Mrs.
that's one of
Patterson, let's.
the things that we need to work on. This all of these schools at the top thing. We need to work on that, right? Because
Yes.
you see all the students failing other schools. Everybody
Hmm.
wants to go to KC or go to Calabar or JC. We need to have high quality schools across Jamaica.
Absolutely.
Right?
And the only
Yeah,
way to do that is the UIC system. But
yeah.
let me hear what Mrs. Patterson might have to share with us after listening to the conversation.
Wait, she's
Um,
putting something up. No, so she's busy.
oh, she's busy.
Yeah,
Okay.
she's
All
busy
right. I
right
couldn't
now.
see it. I
Yeah,
couldn't see it. Thank you. All right. So
yeah.
we'll spare her the torture. But what do you think of the conversation so far? Mr. Chambers raised a number of very good questions on some. Is he back? Is he
All right,
back with us?
so
Let me see. Hold on.
time for
Okay, I don't think he's back with us yet. I see a question here
if
on.
you want to participate, you can send your WhatsApp messages to
All right, let's go back to
872-454-444,
studio.
872-453-1444. If you are outside of Jamaica, you can send your WhatsApp messages to 954 320-7973. That's 954 320-7973. Without repeating it with Joseph Patterson from the President of the United Independent Congress, and we are discussing practical steps in how we use public services to account. And he has given some good practical steps so far, and I want to go right back to this and wasting no time. Now, let me ask something, Mr. Pat.
Yes.
You indicated that perhaps what we need to have is election of senators from the 14th territory. So are you saying we would have 14 senators?
Yes. We'd have 14 senators instead of 21, and so we'd have 14 senators who are actually representing the people instead of 21 senators representing their parties.
Okay. And would you be would we continue the appointment of independent senators, or we would discontinue that?
Well, we don't have any appointment of independent senators. We had in the 1980 election, where the not 1980, the 1980 the what was it, the 80, was it the 80 85 election, I think, where the PNP boycotted that election, and we had no senators being appointed by the opposition, since there was no opposition. The then Prime Minister, Mr. Edward Siago, in order to create a semblance of so-called democracy, appointed some senators that were called independent senators. But we have never had, outside of that, and normally we have never had independent senators. We have 8 senators appointed by the opposition leader and 13 senators appointed by the Prime Minister, which gives the Prime Minister a majority of senators. And the only issue we have is whenever you need a 2/3 vote in the Senate, then somebody would have to cross the floor and join with the Prime Minister's senators to give them that 2/3 if they ever need it. But outside of that, we have only had partisan senators, persons appointed by, and it's also used as a method to profile people. They use the Senate to profile individuals. So if the party in power, opposition, plans to bring somebody in to become an MP, they would first profile them in the Senate, appoint them to the Senate so that they can have their face on our television screen and people can get used to hearing their names. And then after that, now you hear them running running for a seat as an MP. So the Senate really has not been serving a useful purpose. It has been serving as a rubber stamp for the Prime Minister and the opposition leader, and a place to profile people, to get your sons or daughters or nephews or connected individuals to have their face before the public so that they can be prepped and primed to eventually be placed in a seat to run for Member of Parliament.
I want to acknowledge everyone who has joined on my Facebook page live, and I'm being informed that there are persons who have joined on Stylz Facebook page live as well. I am reading something here from Winston. He says the impeachment bill is another distraction. It is a band-aid on a brushing wound. We need real full change to the entire governance system. We need a new constitution by Jamaicans for Jamaica. So let us go back to that impeachment bill quickly. You have read it through, Mr. Patterson?
Yes, I have read it through from top to bottom.
And what are the things that you think need to be added, altered, to be effective, and what things are you of should be removed if it is going to be effective?
No, Mr. Chambers, there are too many to mention. The thing is, right, listen, it's it's like the Constitution of Jamaica. If you were to ask me, what do we take out and what do we add, subtract and divide in the existing constitution, it is so muddled, it is so wrong, it is so inappropriate, that we would have to, the UIC will not be trying to tinker with the constitution. We're going to completely replace it. So we're going to write a constitution that's proper for Jamaica. In the same way, the bill that they have on the table right now is convoluted. It's convoluted and it's eye-faluted, and it's not designed to achieve the objective for which it has been stated. If our objective is to really, impeach parliamentarians, if our objective is to be able to recall parliamentarians, and let's start with that. Let's begin by saying that A, we will have a job description for the parliamentarian. B, we will have an employment agreement. C, we will have a code of conduct. D, that code of conduct will carry with it specific penalties for misconduct. And on top of that, we're going to create a parliament, create a government where we have proper checks and balances to be able to carry out the mandate of such a bill. If you create a bill without adjusting the inappropriate checks and balances in government, who will effect the bill? It's like what we have now. We have a system in place for contracting, and the Prime Minister can get up tomorrow and say, well, we're not going to follow that system. We're going to have a sole source contract because I think that's necessary, because I think that's expedient. Well, why bother to have laws and systems in place if the Prime Minister can unilaterally get up and say he wants to change it today? So what we need to do is to be very serious about checks and balances, be very serious about good governance, and actually do that.
All right. Well, specifically,
Yes.
I know you say there's a lot. Tell us the ones that are nearing to you, the things.
Well, first of all, Mr. Chambers, the Prime Minister, the Prime Minister can't be the one that is going to appoint anybody to decide on the impeachment of anybody else. So the whole process, first of all, you need to get it out. If you have a corrupt system of governance like we have now, then you want to shift that decision making to, let's say, the judiciary. So it would be the judiciary who would try and convict a person, and then, of course, issue the appropriate penalties for that person. You cannot have his fellow parliamentarians under the power structure of the prime minister and, to a lesser extent, the opposition leader. So you have to take that away first and foremost.
All right. There's something that I always talk about, Mr. Patterson. I'm going to leave the impeachment there because I do believe that there are a lot of things that need to change in that we live.
Yes.
Something I talked about that how do we, to be specific, permanent secretary?
Yes.
In light of some of the challenges that some of the ministries face in checks and balances, should we be continuing this idea of a permanent secretary?
Good question. And I'm very happy to let you know that all of these matters, the UIC has set up specific committees that we invite members of the public to participate in. One of those committees is looking at the structure of government as it relates to ministers of government and permanent secretaries. So, by way of education for your listeners, just in case they're not aware, we currently have a situation where the minister of government is not necessarily a subject matter expert, but is somebody who is appointed from elected politicians by the prime minister to head a particular ministry. Within that ministry, you now have somebody who probably should be a subject matter expert, not probably, should be, appointed as the permanent secretary. So now you have two persons, the minister and the permanent secretary. The permanent secretary is like a deputy minister who is serving as a senior executive under the minister for that portfolio. Now, do we need such a duplication and such a confusion? What the UIC proposes and our system will effect is that ministers of government should not be politicians in the first place. So you want to separate your minister from your parliamentarian. So your MP should focus on being an MP. His or her job is to come to parliament and represent the interest of constituents and focus on that. He's going to look at every bill, every program, every policy and critique it, understand it, influence it as a MP. A minister of government now should be somebody who is a subject matter expert. So you have a minister of education who is an educator, who understands education, who has been trained in education, who has worked in education, and who has risen to a senior level in education, public education. Yes. Yes. Yes.
You are saying that ministers should not be drawn from our pool of parliamentarians, but perhaps should be taken from the private sector?
Absolutely. And the reason for that is you don't want a person who doesn't understand the portfolio to be leading the portfolio, which is what we've done for years. We've had people leading education, leading healthcare, leading environment, leading energy, who don't know what they're doing. And because of that, they have actually destroyed our sugar industry, destroyed our banana industry, destroyed our students and our school system, destroyed our healthcare system, because we don't have qualified, competent persons leading. What we have are politicians who know how to win elections, who know how to fool people, who know how to trick people.
But the criticism that could be dealt with that and that objection, Mr. Patterson,
Yes.
is that if you employ someone from the private sector and that person answers to the minister, doesn't that open that door in and of itself to manipulation and at the end corruption?
Absolutely not. And this is why you need to understand what we talk about when we mean by what we mean by checks and balances. So let's think about it. First of all, when we use the word private sector, let's understand that we mean private citizens. The private sector is outside of government, so persons who are not elected as government. That's private sector. So what we're saying is the people of Jamaica should elect an executive branch. So they elect the president, they elect the vice presidents, they elect the general secretary and the treasury secretary. That's one branch. That's the executive branch. This branch now, Mr. Chambers, has to nominate qualified and competent Jamaicans from wherever they are around the world, here in Jamaica or outside, to say, we want the best person to lead our education ministry. Somebody who is qualified and competent, well experienced in the field. The best person to lead our healthcare. The best person to lead our transportation. The best person to lead our energy. Okay? Now, what happens after that is that your parliamentarians now will provide the oversight. So the MPs will be looking at whatever policies and programs come from the executive, the president, the vice presidents, and these appointed positions. And they will be able to vet them objectively, independently. Now, what you have today is the minister being both a part of the legislator and the executive. How does he vet himself? How does the 18 or 19 persons that are supposed to be sitting in the House of Representatives evaluating policies and programs, how are they to evaluate what they have helped to design and implement? Right? So that is where you have corruption. But if you separate the two, you have just killed corruption, because if the minister or the president and the rest of the executive seeks to do anything contrary to good governance, you will have the MPs and the senators coming down on them like a hawk. But when you have the corruption we have today, which is the 13 senators of the prime minister, and the 18 ministers of the prime minister, and the prime minister, and the rest of his supporters in the majority of the MP coming together to collude and corrupt and cover up, that's when you have mass corruption. And that is why Jamaica has been suffering from mass corruption year after year. We don't have the luxury, for example, of, say, Britain, which has a very large backbench. So you have so many MPs that you can never have all of them, or a majority of them, or a significant number of them being in the cabinet. So you have a large enough number of ministerial MPs on the backbench of the very government that can create problems and create better checks and balances. But a country as small as Jamaica, with only 63 MPs, 2.9 million people, we don't have such a large House of Representatives to ensure, a greater degree of checks and balances, of backbenchers questioning things and so on. So we have to now be more intelligent about the way we design our system of governance. And that's why the UIC took the time out from the very beginning to design a good system, so that when we're elected, we can implement a system that will serve Jamaica for into eternity, because it's going to be effective at checks and balances.
Based on what I'm hearing from Mr. Patterson, it appears that to really hold our public officers accountable, we would need to change the entire panel of governance that we have.
Yes, we must. And, this is why from the very beginning, Mr. Chambers, the UIC has pointed out that Jamaica's fundamental problem is governance. It's not because we elect evil men and women to office. It's because when our colonial masters left us, they were wise enough to know that, first of all, they needed to divide us, and they need to entrench that division in our constitution. And they know that we would then spend the rest of our time fighting each other, undermining each other, and corruptly dissipating our energy and our economic resources. Now, if we're going to turn that around, then we have to do the opposite. We have to unite each other with a non-partisan system. We have to create a system of governance with tremendous checks and balances as opposed to weak checks and balances. And we have to shift the focus away from politics to policy, and therefore effect the kind of systems that will bring out the best in our people educationally, productively, and in understanding and supporting good governance, which right now we don't have because our students don't know what good governance is, much more to support it when they become adults of voting age.
I'm going to ask another complicated question.
Mm-hmm.
Do we go the model of like, if I'm not incorrect, Singapore, where we pay our parliamentarians in line with their private sector counterparts, which would be much higher than we right now? How we to compose the level of corruption and unaccountability that we have?
Well, I am a strong supporter of paying people what they're worth. So I wouldn't say just simply to raise their salary. I would say tie their salaries to performance. So basically, you'd have let's say if I were to be prime minister tomorrow and having the kind of powers that Andrew Holness has to make immediate changes, I would immediately ensure that our MPs have job descriptions, that they have KPIs associated with that, key performance indicators, and that their salary today remains their base salary. And then you have key KPIs attached to that, whereby, let's say, for example, as the GDP of the country goes up, and as the crime rate comes down, and as the education performance indexes go up, and as the cleanliness index of the country goes up, their salaries are going up. And it's tied even more tightly to their parishes and to their constituency. So an MP would see his salary changing in tandem with the improvements in his constituency. And the prime minister would see his salary changing within a bandwidth, of course, because you have to put limits and caps, right? But within limits, you have that. Now, why would I want that? One, I want to pay for performance. And two, I do want our parliamentarians to be adequately paid for the quality of the work which is expected of them. But I could not in good conscience allow an increase in pay today for the severely substandard performance which we have gotten for the last 77 years.
Mm-hmm. Well, one thing I know, but I have to ask you before we go. Do you think as citizens we understand the rule of our local governance as opposed to the member of parliament? Because I will say to you, I don't think we understand, or even the commissioners and the councillors themselves, I don't think they understand their role in improving the life of persons within their particular family.
No.
Do you think that we as citizens appreciate what their roles are and do we hold it to them?
No.
As we really should.
No, well, first of all, if you go back, Mr. Chambers, to where this all began, you might recall that, we're coming out of slavery. And in 1944, we finally got the right to vote. Now, when we got the right to vote in 1944, remember, we're talking about a country where the voters were probably 90% illiterate. Okay? Very, very illiterate, uninformed, uneducated. So all they were voting for was two white men who suggested to them that they care about them and that they want to improve their lives. Basic things like, better wages, better working conditions, basic things, and which were understandable by the people. So when they voted for these two white men and those who were behind them, they were voting for basic improvement to their living standards, their economic position. Between 1944 and 1962, when we had independence, all that happened was that we were driven to become more tribalistic. So we took our eyes off the colonial masters. We stopped seeing the colonial masters as our problem, and we saw each other as the problem. So now if you're green, you're fighting against orange, because if orange win, you're not going to get where you want to get. And if green win, you're not going to get what you want to get. So our colonial masters effectively tricked us to stop looking at the problems that they were causing and start seeing each other as a problem. Now watch me on this. Where does this lead us to today? Today, both the MP, the councillor, and in addition, the citizens don't know what is the right role and responsibility of government.
Okay.
Yes. Sorry?
I have to leave it there. My producer.
Yes.
I told him to interrupt the call.
No problem.
I want to thank you so much. I could go for another 2 hours just talking with you.
Anytime.
Unfortunately, I don't have all that time.
No problem, man.
Thanks for taking some time out of your schedule.
Yes.
And for joining us. And from time to time, Mr. Patterson, we are going to call on you again, because I really do enjoy the conversations with you.
Same here. Same here.
How we govern ourselves.
Thank you so much. And you have a good day until next time as well. All the best.
Thank you very much.
All right. Yes, so there you have it, folks. But that last point I was trying to make when we ended the conversation is that, after the colonial masters got us to start fighting each other and stop fighting them. So we stopped fighting with the colonial masters to give us our freedom, for better working conditions, for better wages. Now we started fighting each other, saying, well, it's because of you, the PNP, why I'm not getting anywhere, or it's because of you, the JLP, while I'm not getting anywhere. And mind you, while we're fighting each other with sticks and stones and then with guns and bullets, those at the top, the 2 white men and their followers, were, living the good life. They had good salaries, good security, the good life. They were living okay. It's just we, the people at the bottom, that, they might give us guns or might give us sticks or instructions or directions to go fight each other, and now to win the vote by any means necessary. So that's how you have the garrison communities, the guns and the gangs, and all the problems we now have today. That's how we get to that level. So the question that Mr. Chambers from Stylz FM was asking is, do I think the MPs and the councillors and even the citizens understand the role and responsibilities of government and their respective role in the process? And the answer is no. The MP doesn't understand his role, the councillor doesn't understand his role, and the citizens don't understand their role or the government's role. The UIC has taken the time to ensure that we define the role of government clearly for citizens, and that we are now educating citizens on what the role of government is, what the real role of your MP, the real role of your councillor, your role as a citizen, and how we can better and more effectively go about building this great country called Jamaica. So until next time, think on these things. Please go to our website at www.uicjamaica.com. Sign up, volunteer, donate. If you're on our YouTube account, please hit that like button and subscribe and share your comments. The same on Facebook and anywhere else you find us, Twitter, wherever we are. Please like, subscribe, share. I look forward again to meeting with you next time to talk more on how we can ensure good governance for a new and better Jamaica. My name again, Joseph Patterson, leader of the UIC Jamaica Party. It is my pleasure to serve, and I look forward to serving as your Prime Minister or President when we shall work together to build that real new Jamaica that we all want. Thank you, take care, and have a good evening.